So, what if everything you think you know about success, about mastery, and about what makes a happy life is just plain wrong? Today, we're going to dive into the world of an ancient Chinese philosopher whose ideas are, honestly, a real challenge to our modern beliefs. His name was Zhuangzi. But let's start with a question for you. Really think about it. That big ambition you have, the goal you're working so hard for, are you 100% sure it's your dream you're chasing and not just a copy of someone else's? Way back over 2,000 years ago, during a really chaotic time in China, Zhuangzi was asking these same kinds of unsettling questions. He was looking around at the conventional wisdom of his day and basically saying, hey, are we sure these paths to success and status actually lead to freedom, or are they just a kind of cage? Check this out. He was once offered the super powerful position of prime minister, and he famously turned it down with this story about a sacred turtle. He asked the officials, would this turtle rather be a revered dead relic sitting in a temple, or would it rather be alive and happy, just dragging its tail through the mud? For Zhuangzi, the answer was a no-brainer. He chose the mud.
Okay, so how do we even begin to apply this kind of thinking? Well, here's how we're going to break it down. We'll explore 3 of Zhuangzi's most powerful stories, looking at this tension between copying success versus creating your own, the 2 very different paths to mastery, and maybe the biggest choice of all, power or peace. And then we'll bring it all back to you.
Right, let's start with success. We're always told to learn from the best, right? Follow a proven model. But what if that's actually the worst advice you could ever take? Zhuangzi tells this amazing little story called the parable of the hand and walk. So the story goes, there's this young guy from a place called Yan, and he hears that the people in the capital city, Handan, have the most graceful, elegant walk in the entire world. And he thinks, that's it. I'm going to go there and learn it for myself. So what's his method? He just starts imitating every single person he sees. But of course, he can't replicate the walk of a man with way longer legs or a woman with a totally different build. And in this obsessive effort to copy everyone else, he completely forgets his own natural way of moving. The story ends, and this is the crazy part, with him totally unable to walk at all, having to literally crawl all the way home. And isn't that just a perfect picture of a debate we're having right now? On one side, we're told, study successful models, save time, avoid mistakes. But on the other, there's this warning that blindly copying kills your own unique passion and, more often than not, just leads to failure, just like that young man from Yan. And to be fair, the argument for learning from others is really strong. Think about it. Business schools are literally built on analyzing successful companies. The ride-hailing app Didi, it didn't start from scratch. It basically adapted Uber's model for the Chinese market. Even Jeff Bezos didn't invent online bookstores. He just perfected a model that was already out there. But Zhuangzi's warning feels so incredibly relevant today. You look at recent polls and the #1 dream job for young people is influencer or streamer. It's the ultimate Handan walk, right? A whole generation aspiring to copy a very visible but incredibly rare type of success, often without ever stopping to ask if that path actually fits who they are. So if just blindly imitating is a trap, how do you develop real skill? Well, this brings us to Zhuangzi's idea of mastery, which he illustrates perfectly in the story of a butcher named Cook Ding. Okay, so a local lord is watching Cook Ding carve up an ox, and he's just mesmerized. The cook's movements aren't forceful at all. They're completely effortless, almost like a perfectly choreographed dance. The flesh just seems to fall away from the bone with a whisper. The Lord is totally blown away and asks the cook, how do you do that? But here's the most stunning detail of all. Cook Ding had been using the exact same knife for 19 years. 19 years to cut up thousands of oxen, and its blade was still as sharp as the day it was made. So the cook explains his secret, and he says it's not about technique, it's all about perception. He said, when I first started, all I saw was the ox. After a few years, I started seeing the individual parts. But now, he says, I don't even see with my eyes anymore. I sense the natural gaps, the empty spaces in the structure, and I just guide my blade right through them. This gets right to the heart of a huge modern debate.
Cookting's story is like the ultimate argument for deep practice. You know, the whole 10,000-hour rule, mastering the hidden principles of a single craft. But today, we're so often told the exact opposite, that in a fast-changing world, we need diverse skills to survive, and that going too deep in just one thing is basically a recipe for becoming obsolete.
Okay, now let's take these ideas about finding our own path and apply them to one of life's biggest choices, the chase for status and power versus a life of, inner peace. So, the brilliant Chancellor Guanzhong is on his deathbed, and his duke asks him to name a successor. And the duke's first choice seems totally obvious, Bao Shuya. He was Guanzhong's lifelong best friend and a guy famous for his integrity. But amazingly, Guanzhong says no, not him. And his reasoning is fascinating. He says his friend Bao Shuya is just too rigid. Yeah, a man of high principles, for sure, but also someone who just can't tolerate mistakes and will hold a grudge forever. Instead, he recommends a man named Xi Peng, describing him as humble, empathetic, and a natural unifier.
This ancient problem is basically a mirror of a modern leadership debate. Do you want the brilliant jerk model? Think of someone like Steve Jobs, demanding, difficult, but relentlessly focused on results. Or do you want an empathetic leader, someone focused on inclusivity and bringing people together? Zhuangzi's story clearly argues for the second one.
Guanzhong understood this simple truth, which is captured perfectly in this ancient saying. If you demand absolute purity, you're going to end up alone. A leader just can't afford to be so rigid that they can't work with imperfect people, which is, let's face it, all of us. And this brings all these ancient stories right back home, to us, right here in the 21st century. After hearing all this, it feels like Zhuangzi is asking us one single, very direct question. He's challenging us to actually look at our own lives. Are we trying to learn that hand and walk, forcing ourselves into a version of success that just doesn't fit? Are we truly understanding our craft like cookting? Or are we just, mindlessly going through the motions? And at the end of the day, are we chasing a title? Or are we chasing a life of actual, genuine freedom? The real core of Zhuangzi's wisdom, it seems, comes down to self-awareness. It's captured perfectly in one last story about a simple sheep butcher named Tu Youngyu. After a war, the king offered him rewards and a high-ranking position for his loyalty. But he refused. He said, "I have my old job back. I have already restored what belongs to me. Why should I get any extra reward?" So I'll just leave you with this. Are you spending your life trying to learn the hand and walk, forcing yourself into a shape that isn't really you? Or are you, like that master butcher, learning to perceive with your mind and find that path of least resistance that is uniquely and effortlessly your own?